My thumb hovered over the confirm button on my phone screen for 3 seconds before I pressed it. $42 for an Uber home seemed excessive, but the alternative was standing outside the Morrison Gallery in a city that looked like it was about to tear itself apart. Wind whipped my hair across my face hard enough to sting. And somewhere in the distance, a transformer exploded with a crack that sounded too much like gunfire. October in Chicago was supposed to be beautiful. Falling leaves, crisp air, pumpkin-spiced everything. Instead, the weather forecast had labeled tonight's storm catastrophic. In that calm, clinical way, meteorologists deliver news about disasters. I could already see trash cans rolling down Michigan Avenue like tumbleweeds, and the sky had turned that peculiar shade of green that made my stomach clench with childhood memories of tornado drills. My exhibition had ended early. Only 17 people had shown up to see my photos documenting the gentrification tearing through the South Side, displacing families who'd lived there for generations. 17 people who'd glanced at images of boarded-up businesses and luxury condos before rushing back to their own safe neighborhoods. I'd spent 6 months on that project, and it felt like screaming into a void. The Uber app refreshed. Due to high demand and severe weather conditions, you've been matched with another passenger heading in a similar direction. Additional discount applied. Great. Shared rides during the apocalypse. I wrapped my jacket tighter around my camera bag and watched the little car icon inch through traffic that had turned into chaos. Emergency sirens wailed from multiple directions. My phone buzzed with alerts about downed power lines, flooding on Lower Wacker Drive, and a shelter-in-place recommendation that I was actively ignoring. A black Toyota Camry pulled up to the curb, wipers working frantically against the deluge. The driver, a tired-looking man in his 50s, barely glanced at me as I dove into the back seat. Water poured off my jacket onto the leather interior. "Maya?" he asked, eyes on his GPS. "Yes. Thank you for picking up one more." He pulled away from the curb before I'd even buckled my seatbelt. "Emergency shared ride. You both going north." I settled into my corner, trying to ignore the dampness seeping through my jeans. Through the rain-streaked window, I watched Chicago transform into something unrecognizable. Store windows boarded up hastily with plywood, trees bending at angles that looked impossible, a bus shelter that had completely detached from its foundation and skittered across the street like a metal tumbleweed. We stopped 3 blocks away, near the entrance to an Italian restaurant I recognized from magazine spreads. The place had a 2-month waiting list and entrees that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. A man emerged from the shadowed doorway, moving with the kind of controlled urgency that immediately caught my attention. He slid into the seat beside me, bringing with him the scent of expensive cologne cut with something metallic. Rain dripped from his dark hair onto the collar of what had to be a designer suit, perfectly tailored to broad shoulders, and a frame that suggested he spent considerable time doing something more physical than sitting behind a desk. "Apologies," he said, his voice low and smooth despite whatever had him wound tight as a spring. "I appreciate you sharing the ride." I nodded, words momentarily stuck in my throat. The man was objectively stunning in a way that felt almost dangerous. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, eyes so dark green they looked black in the dim light. But it wasn't his appearance that made my pulse quicken. It was the way he held himself, coiled energy barely contained, and the dark stain on the cuff of his white shirt that looked suspiciously like blood. "No problem," I managed. "Storm of the century out there." Indeed, he settled against the seat, but there was nothing relaxed about his posture. His gaze swept the street behind us, then forward, then to the side mirrors with the methodical assessment of someone expecting trouble. "Heading north? Lincoln Park area. Convenient. I'm going to Northwestern Memorial. The hospital." That explained the blood, maybe. Except the emergency room entrance was on the south side of the building, and we were heading away from the most direct route. Our driver merged into traffic that had slowed to a crawl. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the city in stark white flashes that made everything look like a noir film. Thunder followed immediately, close enough to rattle the car windows. "You're a photographer," the man said, gesturing to my bag with a slight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Professional?" I followed his gaze to where my camera strap had slipped out of the partially open zipper. "Freelance. Photojournalism, mostly. You have a good eye." Observation is a survival skill in my line of work, which is import and export, various goods, international logistics. He said it smoothly, the kind of practiced answer that told me absolutely nothing. I'm Gabriel. Maya. I hesitated, then added, what kind of goods? That almost smile flickered again, the kind that require considerable negotiation and discretion. Before I could press further, our driver cursed in Spanish and jerked the wheel to the right. A massive oak tree, roots torn from the saturated earth, crashed across the street ahead of us. Its branches scraped against cars unfortunate enough to be in its path, setting off a chorus of alarms. We'll have to detour, the driver muttered, already pulling up an alternate route. Takes us through Inglewood, though. Not ideal in this weather. I saw Gabriel's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. How much longer to Northwestern? Maybe 20 minutes? Roads are flooding everywhere. Gabriel pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, and I caught a glimpse of the screen. Not a standard smartphone. Something else. Possibly a burner given the basic display and lack of identifying markers. Who carried burner phones in 2025? Englewood at night during a catastrophic storm. The neighborhood had been struggling for years, caught between poverty, violence, and the same gentrification I'd been documenting elsewhere. In good weather with heavy police presence, it was manageable. Tonight, it would be something else entirely. We turned onto a street where half the streetlights were already out. Shadows pooled in doorways and alleys. A group of men huddled under an overpass scattered as we approached, but not before I saw the distinctive shape of weapons poorly concealed under jackets. Lock the doors, Gabriel said quietly to the driver. There was authority in his voice that made it sound less like a suggestion and more like a command. The driver complied immediately. I clutched my camera bag tighter, hyper-aware of Gabriel's presence beside me. He'd shifted slightly, angled so he could watch both sides of the street. That metallic smell I'd noticed earlier intensified, and I realized it wasn't just cologne. It was blood, fresher than the stain on his cuff suggested. Are you hurt? I asked, keeping my voice low. Not seriously. That's not the same as no. He turned those dark green eyes on me, and I felt the full weight of his attention like a physical thing. You noticed details. Occupational hazard of the photography? Of staying alive. The words came out sharper than intended. I grew up in this city. I know what blood smells like, and I know when someone is expecting trouble. For a moment, something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or calculation. Then you understand why I need to reach the hospital quickly. Before I could respond, our driver slammed on the brakes. Ahead of us, 2 cars had stopped perpendicular to each other, completely blocking the narrow street. Men poured out of both vehicles, and the first gunshot cracked through the storm with unmistakable clarity. Our driver didn't hesitate. He threw the car in reverse, but another vehicle had pulled up behind us, boxing us in. More shots, rapid fire, and our windshield spiderwebbed with cracks as a bullet punched through. The driver screamed and ducked. The car lurched forward, directly toward the shootout. Everything happened in fragments. Gabriel's hand on the back of my head, forcing me down. His body shifting to cover mine, as glass rained down around us. The heat of him pressed against my back, solid and immovable. More gunfire, so close I could smell the burnt powder even through the closed windows. The car scraped against something metal with a shriek that set my teeth on edge. Then the driver's door flew open, and he was running, abandoning us in the middle of a war zone. Gabriel lifted his weight off me slowly. Are you hit? I took inventory. Trembling hands, racing heart, ears ringing from the gunfire, but no pain beyond adrenaline making every nerve-ending scream. No. You? I'm fine. He reached for the door handle. We need to move. Now. Move where? There's a gang war happening out there. And staying in a stationary vehicle makes us an easy target. His voice remained calm, almost gentle despite the words. Trust me, Maya. I know what I'm doing. Trust him. A stranger with blood on his clothes and secrets in his eyes, in the middle of the worst neighborhood during the worst storm in a decade. Every instinct I had screamed that this was a terrible idea. But the alternative was sitting in a bullet-riddled Uber, waiting to see who won the shootout currently raging around us. I grabbed my camera bag and nodded. Gabriel's hand found mine in the darkness, warm and steady despite everything. Stay close. Move when I move. Don't look back. He pushed the door open, and we ran into the storm. Gabriel's hand remained locked around mine as we ran through sheets of water that felt more like walls. My sneakers splashed through puddles deep enough to soak through to my socks within seconds. Behind us, gunfire continued in sporadic bursts, but the storm swallowed most of the sound, turning it into distant pops that could have been transformers exploding or car backfires. He pulled me toward a narrow alley between two buildings, their brick walls slick with rain and covered in graffiti that glowed faintly under the intermittent lightning. The space smelled like garbage and stagnant water, but it offered cover from both the shootout and the worst of the wind. We pressed against the wall, breathing hard. My heart slammed against my ribs so violently I thought it might crack through bone. Gabriel positioned himself between me and the alley entrance, his body a solid barrier, one hand still holding mine while the other reached inside his jacket. When it emerged, I saw the unmistakable shape of a handgun. "You're armed," I said, the words coming out sharper than intended. "Yes." No apology, no explanation. He checked the magazine with practiced efficiency that told me he'd done this 1,000 times before. "Import and export." I repeated his earlier lie. "What do you really do?" "Right now I'm keeping us alive." His eyes scanned the alley entrance, then the fire escape above us, calculating exits and threats with the same methodical assessment he'd shown in the car. "Can you climb?" I followed his gaze upward. The fire escape ladder was extended, reachable if we could jump high enough. In this storm, that metal will be slippery as ice. Better than staying on the ground when they start searching the area. "They? You mean those men shooting at each other?" Gabriel's jaw tightened. "Some of them will be looking for me specifically. Once they realize the car is abandoned, they'll fan out." The implications sank through my adrenaline like stones through water. "Someone tried to kill you tonight. That's why you needed the Uber. Why you had blood on your shirt. Why you're carrying a gun. Very observant." He shifted slightly, water dripping from his dark hair down the sharp planes of his face. "Which is why I need to get you somewhere safe before you become collateral damage." My camera bag pressed against my hip, suddenly heavy with guilt. During those frantic seconds in the car, when bullets had been tearing through metal and glass, my photographer's instincts had taken over. I'd raised my camera and fired off shots, capturing the chaos through muscle memory more than conscious thought. "I took pictures," I admitted. "Of the shootout." Gabriel's attention snapped to me with laser focus. "You what?" "It's instinct. I don't even think about it anymore. Something happens, I document it." I pulled the camera from my bag, the familiar weight grounding me despite everything. I got their faces, the license plates, everything. He was quiet for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. When he spoke, his voice had dropped to something softer, almost careful. "Maya, I need you to delete those photos." "Why?" "Because the men in those images work for someone very dangerous. If those photos surface, connect to you in any way, you become a target." I clutched the camera tighter. These could be evidence. Someone could identify who started the shooting, who's responsible. "The police won't touch this." He said it with absolute certainty. "This is a territorial dispute between organizations that operate outside the law. Those pictures won't bring justice. They'll bring death. Organizations." The word settled between us like a confession. "You mean the Mafia?" Gabriel didn't deny it. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a wallet, extracting crisp bills without bothering to count them. $5,000. Delete the photos, give me the memory card, and walk away from this. From me. Forget tonight ever happened. I stared at the money, then at his face. Rain continued to pour into the alley, soaking us both, but his hand holding the bills remained steady. This was a transaction to him, clean and simple. Pay off the witness, eliminate the evidence, move on. I don't want your money. Everyone wants money. Not for this. I wrapped both hands around my camera, protective and defiant. These photos are my work, my documentation of what happened tonight. You can't just buy them like you're purchasing contraband from one of your suppliers. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or reassessment. You think you understand who I am after 20 minutes of conversation? I understand you're involved in something violent enough that people want you dead. I understand you carry a gun and know how to use it. I understand you're trying to control a situation where you have zero actual control over me. My voice shook, but I kept going. And I understand that if those photos are dangerous enough for you to offer $5,000 to destroy them, they're important enough to keep. His phone buzzed, cutting through the tension. He answered without breaking eye contact with me. Adriano. I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I watched Gabriel's face shift through micro-expressions. Relief, then anger, then cold calculation. Luca's stable? A pause. And the Bratva? Another pause, longer this time. His jaw clenched. How many streets are they covering? The south side? All of Englewood? He glanced at me. I have a complication. I bristled at being called a complication. A civilian. Wrong place, wrong time. He listened. No, I can't leave her here. They saw the car. If they're thorough, they'll check cameras, identify passengers. More listening. Fine. Send a secure vehicle to the warehouse on Halstead and 47th. 20 minutes. He ended the call and pocketed the phone. The gun had disappeared back into his jacket at some point, which should have made me feel safer but somehow didn't. Who's Adriano? I asked. My consigliere. My advisor. He said it like those words should mean something specific. And Luca is my second in command. He was injured in the attack at the restaurant tonight. The attack you survived. Yes. And the Bratva? Russian organized crime. They want control of shipping routes I currently manage through the northern ports. He spoke matter-of-factly, like discussing quarterly earnings instead of gang warfare. Tonight was their second attempt to eliminate me this week. The casualness of it made my stomach turn. You sound like you're talking about a hostile business takeover. That's exactly what it is, just with higher body counts. He checked his watch, an expensive piece that had somehow survived our run through the storm without a scratch. We have 19 minutes before the car arrives. After that, I'll take you home personally and post security on your building until we confirm you're not a target. And if I refuse? To delete the photos or to accept protection? Both. Gabriel stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. This close, I could see the small scar bisecting his left eyebrow, the way his wet shirt clung to a body that suggested regular time in a gym, the exhaustion around his eyes that spoke to more than just tonight's violence. People die around me, Maya. His voice dropped to something raw and honest. Not because I want them to, but because association with me becomes a death sentence. My father was killed at a charity event. My mother's driver was executed in front of their home. A woman I dated 3 years ago had her car bombed. He paused, letting that sink in. I don't want to add your name to that list because you happened to share an Uber during a storm. The vulnerability in his admission caught me off guard. This wasn't manipulation or threat. This was genuine fear wrapped in brutal honesty. I looked down at my camera, at the images stored in its memory that could put me in danger. Then I looked back at Gabriel, at this complicated, dangerous man who'd used his body as a shield when bullets flew. My thumb found the delete button. One by one, I erased the photos from tonight, watching faces and license plates disappear into digital oblivion. Gabriel watched silently, and I wondered if he noticed that I was deleting from the current folder, not from the backup storage card hidden in the bottom of my bag. Done, I said, showing him the empty camera display. He studied me for a long moment. You kept a backup. It wasn't a question. You're observant too. Smart. He didn't sound angry, just resigned. Keep it hidden. If the wrong people know you have those images, it won't matter that you deleted the originals. Thunder cracked overhead, close enough to make us both flinch. The storm showed no signs of letting up. If anything, the wind had intensified, turning the rain nearly horizontal. Gabriel's phone buzzed again. He checked it, then gestured toward the end of the alley. Car's 5 minutes out. We move when I say. Stay low. Don't stop for anything. And then what? Then I make sure you get home safely. His eyes met mine, dark green and intense. And you forget you ever met me. But even as he said it, we both knew that was impossible. Some encounters changed everything, and this was one of them. I woke up to 17 missed calls from Carmen and a news alert that made my blood turn cold. Massacre at Giordano's restaurant. 4 dead, multiple injured in targeted attack. The first photo in the article stopped my breath. A body being loaded into a coroner's van, face partially visible beneath the sheet. The man who should have been driving Gabriel last night. Dead before he ever had a chance to pick up his passenger. My phone buzzed. "Carmen, tell me you're alive," she said. "I'm fine. What's happening?" "Gang war. 4 men executed at Giordano's. 3 more found in Englewood. Police are calling it territorial disputes, but my sources say this was a hit on the Ravellini family." She paused. "You know who they are?" The name landed like a punch. "No. One of the big 3 families running organized crime in Chicago. Italian mafia, old school but modernized. Casinos, construction, security services, all legitimate on the surface." Carmen's voice carried that manic edge she got chasing stories. "The Bratva's been trying to take their territory. Russian organized crime. This feels like escalation." I thought about Gabriel's expensive watch, the gun, the authority in his voice. "Import and export. Why are you asking?" Carmen pressed. "This isn't your beat. Just curious." Storm had me watching news. The lie tasted bitter. After we hung up, I Googled Gabriel Ravellini. Sparse results. Charity galas, construction contracts, business journals. Nothing screaming mob boss. Nothing proving he wasn't. One photo caught my attention. A hospital fundraiser 3 years ago. Gabriel in the foreground with donors, and in the background, slightly out of focus, my grandmother Elena in her bakery apron, holding a tray of pastries. My grandmother knew him. 20 minutes later, I walked into Padaria Elena. The smell of fresh bread hit me like comfort. Elena stood behind the counter, silver hair in its perpetual bun, and her face lit up before concern replaced joy. "You look terrible. The storm? Can we talk in the back?" She studied me with eyes that missed nothing. "Is this about a man? How do you always know?" "Because you have the same look your mother had when she met your father." She flipped the sign to indicate a break and led me to her tiny office. "Tell me, what do you know about Gabriel Ravellini?" Elena's expression shifted, careful and calculating. She poured us coffee, sat down with a sigh. "That's a name I haven't heard you say before. I met him last night. We got caught in that shooting in Englewood." Her hand flew to her chest. "You were there? He kept me safe. But this morning, the news about the restaurant. I need to understand what I got involved in." Elena folded her hands on the desk. "Gabriel Ravellini is a complicated man. His family's been in this neighborhood 70 years. Started on the docks, expanded into other businesses. Some legitimate, some not. So he is mafia. He runs his family's organization, yes." She said it without judgment. "But he's different from his father. When he took over 8 years ago, he changed things. No drugs, no human trafficking, no targeting civilians. He has rules. Honor. It's old-fashioned. Maybe naive, but he believes in it. You talk like you know him personally." "I do." She glanced at a photo on the wall. "When your grandfather died and left me with debts I couldn't pay, Gabriel's father bought the debt. I thought I'd sold my soul, but Gabriel wasn't his father. When he took over, he came here personally, renegotiated everything, cut my debt in half. He's been coming every Sunday for 8 years, buying bread and pastries, paying in cash, tipping well. He's never made me feel like I owe him anything beyond our contract. I absorbed this, trying to reconcile the man she described with the one who'd held a gun in an alley. My parents, the shooting when I was 16. Could that have been... No." Elena's response was immediate. "Your parents died in a gang crossfire. Random violence. No connection to the Ravellini family. It was investigated. Just senseless tragedy." She took my hand. "I don't know what happened last night. But if Gabriel kept you safe, you were lucky. He's a man of honor in a dishonorable business, but that doesn't make him safe to be around. His enemies are brutal." The door chimes jingled. Elena stood to return to work. I followed, intending to leave, when I saw him. Gabriel stood at the counter, hair still damp, wearing jeans and a black sweater. He held his usual shopping basket. His eyes found mine, surprise flickering before settling into something guarded. "Maya, I didn't expect to see you here. My grandmother's bakery." His gaze shifted to Elena. "Mrs. Sinclair, your granddaughter?" "Since birth." Elena folded her arms, protective. "Did you know this?" "I didn't." The resemblance is obvious now. Something genuine crossed his expression. "We need to talk," I said. He glanced at the empty shop, then Elena. "Could we use your storage room? I promise she'll be perfectly safe." Elena studied us both, then nodded toward the back. 10 minutes. The storage room smelled like flour and yeast. Gabriel closed the door, set down his basket, leaned against a shelf. Suddenly the space felt much smaller. "You researched me," he said. "You knew I would." I kept my hands in my pockets. "You're Gabriel Ravellini, head of the Ravellini family. The man whose driver was murdered before he could pick you up." "Yes. The restaurant massacre was meant for you." "Yes." His honesty was worse than lies. No pretense, no softening. "I need to tell you something," I said. "When I deleted those photos, I didn't delete the backup. I keep a redundant memory card. The images are still there." His expression didn't change. "I know." "You knew." "I suspected. You deleted too easily." He straightened. "Why tell me now?" "Because my grandmother thinks you're honorable. Because you kept me alive. Because I'm tired of lying." I pulled out my phone, showed him my archive. "This isn't just the shootout. I have years of photojournalism. Politicians with criminals, cash exchanges, corruption that could bring down careers." He scrolled through, face unreadable. "This is dangerous work. I know, but it matters. And the backup from last night? Still exists, but I won't publish it unless you give me reason to." I met his gaze. "Consider it insurance." A smile ghosted across his mouth. "Smart. Ruthless. I'm impressed. I'm trying to survive whatever this is. What do you think this is?" The question hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. "I don't know yet, but I want to understand. Why someone wants you dead badly enough to massacre 4 people. The ports. I control shipping routes through the northern docks. The Bratva wants that access. Dmitry Volkov's been pushing into Chicago for 2 years. I'm the last holdout. So he's trying to kill you. Him or someone he hired. Last night was the 2nd attempt this week. He pulled a card from his wallet, black with a silver embossed number. If you notice anything unusual, cars following you, strangers asking questions, call this, day or night." I took it. Its weight somehow significant. "You think I'm in danger?" "Dmitry has informants everywhere. They saw that Uber, saw us together. If they're thorough, they'll identify you, try to use you against me." His jaw tightened. "I won't let that happen. You can't protect everyone." "No, but I can protect you." The way he said it felt like a vow. Elena's voice carried from the shop. Time was up. Gabriel picked up his basket, and we emerged to find my grandmother packaging his order with unnecessary force. He paid, tipped, left with one final glance that felt like a brand. 2 nights later, walking home from a shoot, I noticed the car. Black sedan, tinted windows, 3 car lengths behind for 6 blocks. When I turned, it followed. When I stopped, it idled. My hands shook as I dialed Gabriel's number. He answered immediately. "Maya, there's a car following me. Black sedan. Where exactly?" I gave the cross streets, background noise, doors slamming, an engine starting. "Stay on the line. Keep walking toward populated areas. I'm 4 minutes away." Those minutes felt like hours. He kept me talking, giving turn-by-turn directions, keeping me from panic. The sedan stayed patient and predatory. When Gabriel's SUV pulled up, I'd never been more relieved. He was out before it fully stopped, a man I didn't recognize emerging from the driver's side, both radiating controlled violence. "Get in," Gabriel commanded, positioning himself between me and the sedan. The moment I was inside, the driver pulled smoothly into traffic. The black sedan didn't follow. "Bratva," the driver confirmed. "Ran the plates. Shell company Volkov uses. They're watching her," Gabriel said. his hand near his concealed weapon. Sitting in Gabriel Ravellini's armored SUV with a man named Luca driving, I understood that my life had fundamentally changed. There was no going back, no pretending that night in the storm had been isolated. I was part of Gabriel's world now, whether I wanted to be or not. Gabriel's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building in the Gold Coast that probably cost more than my entire neighborhood combined. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Lake Michigan that looked like something from a luxury magazine spread, all steel and glass and understated elegance that screamed money without being ostentatious. "This is temporary," I said, for the third time since Luca had driven us here. "I have work, a life, an apartment the Bratva now knows the location of." Gabriel set my camera bag on the marble entryway table. "You saw the surveillance photos, Maya. They're watching your building, your grandmother's bakery, the places you frequent. Staying there is suicide." He'd shown me the pictures in the car. High-resolution images of me leaving my apartment, entering the bakery, walking to the L station. Timestamps from the past 48 hours. Professional surveillance that made my skin crawl. "So I'm a prisoner here. You're protected here." His voice hardened. "There's a difference." "Is there?" I crossed my arms. "Because from where I'm standing, this looks like a very expensive cage." Something flickered in his expression. Frustration, maybe, or understanding. He moved to the windows, hands in his pockets, silhouette dark against the city lights. "You can leave whenever you want. I won't stop you. But if you walk out that door, you do it knowing Dimitri's men are waiting to use you against me." He turned, those green eyes intense. "Your choice. Always your choice." The sincerity in his voice disarmed me. This wasn't about control, I realized. It was about genuine fear for my safety. "Fine. But I have conditions." I stepped closer. "I'm not a prisoner. I can work, edit photos, take assignments. My grandmother gets protection whether I'm here or not. And you tell me what's happening. No secrets. No treating me like I'm too fragile for the truth." Agreed. He pulled out his phone. "I'll have Luca bring your equipment tomorrow. Clothes, anything you need. Elena already has a security detail. 2 men rotating shifts outside the bakery. She'll hate that. She'll understand." His mouth curved slightly. "Your grandmother is tougher than you think." A door opened down the hallway, and a young woman emerged. She had Gabriel's dark hair, but worn long and straight, falling past her shoulders. Her eyes were lighter, more hazel than green, and when she saw me, genuine curiosity replaced the wariness. "Sophia," Gabriel said. "This is Maya Sinclair. She'll be staying with us for a while." Sophia's gaze flicked between us, clearly reading more into the situation than Gabriel had said. "Another one of your strays?" "Sophia," warning in his voice. "I'm kidding." She crossed to me, extending her hand. Sophia Ravellini, the considerably less threatening sibling. Law student, idealist, perpetual disappointment to the family legacy. I liked her immediately. Maya, photographer, apparently a magnet for trouble. "Aren't we all in this house?" She shot Gabriel a look. "I'm assuming the guest room." "Of course." "Good, because if you'd put her in the west wing near your bedroom, I'd have questions." Sophia gestured for me to follow. "Come on, I'll show you around before my brother reverts to his usual brooding silence." The penthouse was massive. 3 bedrooms, each with ensuite bathrooms. A library with actual first editions lining the shelves. A kitchen that looked like it belonged in a restaurant. The guest room Sophia led me to was larger than my entire apartment, decorated in soft grays and cream with that same spectacular view. "He's terrified, you know," Sophia said once the door was closed. "I haven't seen him like this since our father died." I set my camera bag on the bed. "Like what?" "Afraid. Gabriel doesn't do fear. He does calculation, strategy, controlled violence when necessary. But you? You've got him off balance." She studied me. "How did you meet?" "Shared Uber during the storm. Wrong place, wrong time. Or exactly the right place." Sophia sat on the edge of the bed. "Our father was killed 8 years ago, ambushed leaving a charity event. Gabriel was 26, not ready, not prepared, but he took over anyway because someone had to. He cleaned house, got rid of everyone involved in the really dirty stuff, drugs, human trafficking. the things that destroy communities. Made enemies doing it, but he didn't care. He wanted to be different. Your grandmother talks about him like he's some kind of knight-errant in a three-piece suit. Sophia laughed. That's not inaccurate. Gabriel has this outdated sense of honor. No targeting civilians, no breaking his word, loyalty above everything. It's gotten him in trouble more than once. She paused. But it also means when he says he'll protect you, he means it. With his life, if necessary. The weight of that settled over me. I don't want anyone dying for me. Then don't give him a reason to. Sophia stood. Dinner's usually around 8. Gabriel cooks when he's stressed, so prepare for something elaborate and delicious. Fair warning, he's going to hover. It's annoying but well-intentioned. She was right. At 8 sharp, Gabriel appeared at my door with an invitation that sounded more like an order. I followed him to the kitchen where he'd somehow prepared osso buco that smelled incredible, with risotto and roasted vegetables arranged with the precision of a chef. You cook, I said, surprised. My mother insisted all her children learn. She said anyone who couldn't feed themselves wasn't truly independent. He poured wine, handed me a glass. How do you take criticism of your work? The question caught me off guard. Depends on the criticism. Your exhibition photos, the gentrification series. He gestured to where he'd somehow acquired copies, displayed on a tablet propped against the counter. They're technically perfect. Composition, lighting, emotional impact. But they're safe. Safe? You show the aftermath. Boarded windows, displaced families, the wreckage. But you don't show the cause. The politicians approving development, the contractors cutting deals, the money changing hands. His gaze met mine. You document the symptom, not the disease. Heat flushed through me, part anger, part recognition. Those photos could get me blacklisted. Those photos could change things. He plated the food. You have the archive. Use it. We ate in charged silence. He was right, and I hated that he saw it so clearly. My work had been careful, palatable enough for galleries and publications. But the real story, the corruption I'd documented over years, sat unused because I'd been afraid. After dinner, I called Carmen from the library. She answered on the first ring, voice sharp with concern. Where the hell have you been? I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. I'm fine. Just staying with a friend for a while. The surveillance spooked me. I glanced at Gabriel, who'd given me privacy, but remained within line of sight. Can you do me a favor? Look into any recent real estate deals in the 43rd Ward. Politicians approving variances. Contractors with criminal connections. I'm working on something. This have anything to do with the Ravellini story? Maybe. I'll explain later. We talked for another 10 minutes before I hung up. Gabriel approached with my camera, which I'd left on the kitchen counter. May I? I nodded. He scrolled through recent photos, stopping on one I didn't remember taking. Him in the kitchen earlier, guard lowered, stirring risotto with complete focus. The light had caught him perfectly, showing someone softer than the dangerous man I'd met in that alley. Keep this one, he said, handing back the camera, for your archive of symptoms and diseases. Before I could respond, the library door opened. A man in his 50s entered, silver-haired and dressed in an immaculate suit. He nodded to Gabriel with the familiarity of long association. Adriano, Gabriel greeted. Maya, this is Adriano Bellavita, my consigliere. Advisor, Adriano clarified, offering his hand, though the Italian sounds more impressive. Mrs. Sinclair, I've heard quite a bit about you. None of it good, I'm guessing. On the contrary, he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Gabriel, we need to speak. It's urgent. Gabriel's expression shifted. All business. Give us a moment. I stood to leave, but Gabriel's hand on my arm stopped me. Stay. You wanted no secrets. Adriano pulled out his phone, displaying what looked like surveillance footage. Dimitri made his move. He approached the Donatelli and Castrovani families this afternoon. Offered them each 20% of your territory if they help eliminate you. Neutrality isn't an option anymore. My breath caught. Gabriel's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. Their response. Donatelli's considering. Castrovani wants guarantees. They're giving you 72 hours to counteroffer or disappear. Adriano's gaze flicked to me. They know about her. Dimitri's using it as proof you're distracted, vulnerable. I'm not vulnerable. Gabriel's voice carried an edge that made me shiver. Set up a meeting. I want all of them in a room where I can see their faces when they refuse Dimitri's offer. And if they don't refuse, then we go to war. The casual way he said it, like discussing business strategy instead of violence, reminded me exactly who Gabriel was. Not just the man who cooked and appreciated photography, but someone who'd survived 8 years at the top of a criminal organization. Adriano left after another 15 minutes of planning I only half understood. Territory, alliances, contingencies. When we were alone again, Gabriel poured himself whiskey, offered me the bottle. I took it, drinking straight from the glass he handed me. Your photo archive, he said suddenly. The one you showed me at the bakery. You said politicians with known criminals. Dimitri bribes officials to operate freely. If you have proof of which ones, it could shift the balance. I stared at him. You want to use my work as leverage. I want to use every advantage we have. He stepped closer. You said those photos could bring down careers. Let them. Expose Dimitri's network. Cut off his political protection. It won't stop him, but it'll weaken his position enough that the other families see working with him as a liability. And if I refuse? If I say my work isn't a weapon for mob wars? Then I respect that decision and find another way. His gaze held mine. But I think you know these people deserve exposure. That justice matters more than staying neutral. He was right. The corruption I documented, the handshakes between elected officials and criminals, the cash exchanges in parking garages, it all mattered. Publishing it had always been the goal. The fact that it also helped Gabriel survive was almost secondary. I'll do it, I said, but on my terms. I choose which photos, how they're released, what story they tell. Agreed. We stood close enough that I could see the flecks of amber in his green eyes, smell the whiskey on his breath. The air between us felt electric, charged with everything unsaid. Why are you really doing this? I whispered. Protecting me. It's more than just preventing Dimitri from using me against you. Because the moment I saw you in that car, something shifted. His hand came up, fingertips grazing my jaw. Because you argued with me in an alley while I held a gun. Because you're brave and stubborn, and you look at me like I'm human instead of a monster. You are human. Most days I'm not sure. I closed the distance, pressing my lips to his before I could overthink it. He responded immediately, one hand sliding into my hair while the other pulled me flush against him. The kiss was everything I'd been denying since that first night. Hungry and desperate, and absolutely reckless. An alarm shrieked through the penthouse. We broke apart, Gabriel's hand moving to his weapon in one fluid motion. His phone buzzed with alerts. Security breach on the north entrance. Stay here, he commanded, already moving toward the door. Luca appeared in the hallway, weapon drawn. They exchanged rapid words in Italian before Gabriel returned, tension visible in every line of his body. False alarm, faulty sensor, but his eyes said otherwise. Someone had tested the security, probed for weaknesses. The kiss had changed everything. And now, standing in Gabriel Ravellini's fortress, with war coming and my heart still racing, I understood there was no going back. I was all in, for better or worse. 10 days in Gabriel's penthouse, and I'd developed a routine that felt disturbingly normal. Mornings editing photos in the library while he worked through security reports. Afternoons where Sophia and I explored Chicago's architecture through my lens, always with Luca trailing 2 steps behind. Evenings when Gabriel cooked elaborate meals, and we talked about everything except the war building around us. I learned his operations weren't what I'd imagined. The casinos ran clean audits, employees paid fair wages with real benefits, construction contracts used union labor, projects inspected to code. The security firm protected small businesses in neighborhoods police ignored, collecting fees but actually showing up when called. No drugs, no human trafficking, no loan sharking that breaks people, Gabriel explained one night over wine. My father built this family on exploitation. I'm trying to build something different. You're still a criminal. Yes, he didn't flinch from it. But I choose which laws to break. The ones written by politicians I have photos of taking bribes. He had a point I didn't want to acknowledge. Carmen visited on day 8, visibly nervous despite Luca's clearance. She hugged me too tight, eyes darting around the penthouse like she expected threats to materialize from the expensive furniture. "We need to talk," she said, voice shaking. "Alone." Gabriel gave us the library without protest. The moment the door closed, Carmen collapsed into a chair. "I'm so sorry, Maya. I didn't know how to tell you." Ice flooded my veins. "Tell me what?" "Dimitri's been wiretapping my phone for months. I'm investigating corruption tied to his operations. And he found out. He's been listening to everything." Her hands shook. "When you called me from here that first week, mentioned where you were, your concerns about the investigation, he heard it all. He knows you're with Gabriel. He knows you care about him." The room spun. "Carmen, there's more. My brother, Miguel. He's an addict. Dimitri's people supply him, have been for a year. 3 days ago, they told me I either feed them information about you and Gabriel, or Miguel disappears." Tears streaked her face. "I'm so sorry. I told them you were staying here, that Gabriel's distracted, that you two are together. I didn't want to. But Miguel, it's okay." I pulled her into a hug despite my racing heart. "We'll figure this out." Gabriel handled it with terrifying efficiency. Within an hour, Miguel was in a private rehab facility under guard. Carmen had a new phone with military-grade encryption, and Adriana was tracking every leak to assess damage. That night, Gabriel found me on the balcony, staring at city lights that blurred through unshed tears. "This is my fault," I said. I called Carmen. I mentioned where I was. Dimitri would have found another way. He stood beside me, close but not touching. He always does. "Your friend's brother is an addict because of him." Carmen was terrified. "How many other people are trapped in his web?" "Too many." His jaw tightened. "Which is why he needs to be stopped." I turned to face him. The man who cooked osso buco and appreciated my photography, who had rules and honor in a world without either. "I'm scared." "Good. Fear keeps you careful." But his hand found mine, fingers intertwining. "I won't let him hurt you, Maya. Whatever it takes." We went inside, and the space between us collapsed with inevitable force. His mouth found mine, desperate and claiming, and I responded with equal hunger. We made it to his bedroom, clothes shed between kisses that felt like promises neither of us could keep. He was careful with me. Reverent even, like I was something precious, instead of a complication threatening everything he'd built. When we finally came together, it felt less like surrender and more like choosing sides in a war where neutrality had never been an option. Afterward, wrapped in sheets that probably cost more than my monthly rent, he traced patterns on my shoulder. "I need you to understand something." His voice was quiet. "This world I'm in, it demands things. Actions I'm not proud of. If you stay with me, you'll see that side eventually. I know what you are, Gabriel. Knowing and witnessing are different. I should have listened to that warning." The call came at 3 a.m. Gabriel's phone screaming with alerts. He was dressed and armed in 30 seconds, Luca already at the door. "Stay here," Gabriel commanded. "What's happening?" "Fire at your grandmother's bakery." My heart stopped. I threw on clothes, following despite his protests. The drive took 8 minutes that felt like hours. Smoke billowed into the night sky, fire trucks battling flames that consumed 40 years of my grandmother's life. Elena stood wrapped in a blanket, soot-streaked, but alive. I ran to her, and she held me tight enough to hurt. "I'm fine, Minhaneta. I'm fine. Gabriel's men got me out." The 2 security guards stood nearby, faces grim. One had burns on his hands from breaking through the back door. Luca approached Gabriel with a tablet showing security footage. I watched over his shoulder. 2 men, faces covered, breaking in through the rear entrance. Gasoline splashed across wooden floors. A match. Bratva. Luca confirmed. Message delivery. "How did they know?" I demanded. "The bakery's been protected for days." Gabriel's expression turned to stone. "Someone told them. Someone on the inside. The investigation took 6 hours. Adriano coordinated with contacts I didn't want to know about, and by morning they had a name. Roberto Ravellini. Gabriel's cousin on his father's side, 3rd-generation family, trusted with mid-level operations. He owes Dimitri $80,000 from gambling debts. Adriano explained in Gabriel's office, voice flat. Been feeding information for 3 weeks. He told them about your relationship with Maya, about Elena's importance to her. Targeted the bakery specifically. Gabriel said nothing for 10 seconds. Then, bring him here. They brought Roberto to a warehouse I didn't recognize. Gabriel didn't ask me to stay away, and I followed because I needed to see this, needed to understand the man I'd given myself to. Roberto knelt in the center of the concrete floor, hands bound, face already showing signs of Luca's preliminary questioning. When Gabriel entered, Roberto started crying. Gabriel, please. I didn't have a choice. They were going to kill me. You did have a choice. Gabriel's voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. You chose to betray family. You chose to target an innocent woman. You chose wrong. What happened next, I'll never forget. Gabriel beat Roberto with methodical precision, each strike calculated for maximum pain without causing death. When he was done, he left Roberto broken and bleeding on the floor. Get him medical treatment, then exile, Gabriel told Luca. He has 72 hours to leave Chicago. If I see him again, I'll finish this. Back in the SUV, I couldn't stop shaking. Gabriel's knuckles were split, blood staining his shirt, and he looked at me with eyes that held no apology. This is my world, Maya. This is what justice looks like when the law can't touch you. That wasn't justice. That was brutality. Sometimes they're the same thing. I got out at the penthouse and headed straight for the guest room. Gabriel didn't follow, giving me space I desperately needed. The man who'd held me last night, who'd whispered sweet things in Italian against my skin, had just beaten his own cousin nearly to death without hesitation. I packed my bag with shaking hands. Sophia found me. You're leaving. I can't stay. Not after what I saw. He's protecting you. Protecting all of us. By becoming a monster? By doing what needs to be done. She sat on the bed. Roberto's betrayal could have gotten you killed. My grandmother taught Gabriel that family protects family, no matter the cost. That's all this was. But it was too much. I called Carmen, who picked me up within the hour. Gabriel didn't stop me, just watched from the window as I left. Before I walked out, he appeared at the door with something in his hand. A delicate silver bracelet, simple and elegant. Please. He fastened it around my wrist. Just keep this. For me. I almost refused. But something in his eyes, genuine fear mixed with resignation, made me nod. At Carmen's apartment, I tried to process everything. The violence, the betrayal, the fact that I'd fallen in love with a man whose world operated on rules I'd never understand. The bracelet felt heavy on my wrist. A reminder of everything I was trying to leave behind. What I didn't know was that Gabriel had put a tracker in it. Always active. Always watching. And that Dmitry Volkov, informed by sources that I'd left Gabriel's protection, was already planning his next move, using me as the bait to finally destroy the man I couldn't stop loving, no matter how hard I tried. Carmen showed up at her apartment door at 2 a.m., mascara streaked down her face, trembling so hard she could barely hold her phone. I need to tell you something, she whispered. Something terrible. I pulled her inside, heart already sinking. The past 3 days away from Gabriel had been torture, replaying that warehouse scene over and over. The sound of fists on flesh, Roberto's cries, the cold efficiency in Gabriel's eyes. Dmitry knows you left, Carmen said, collapsing onto the couch. He knows you're here with me. He's been planning this for days. Ice flooded through my veins. Planning what? He's going to take you. Use you to draw Gabriel out. He told me to keep you here. Keep you unprotected. She grabbed my hands. Maya, I'm so sorry. I should have told you earlier, but I was terrified. He has Miguel, he has leverage, and I... Wait, slow down. I tried to focus through the panic. When did he tell you this? Yesterday. He called me directly. Said if I keep you away from Gabriel for 48 hours, he'll release Miguel from the dealers supplying him. But if I warn you or Gabriel, Miguel dies. My mind raced. Dmitry had orchestrated this perfectly. Used Carmen's vulnerability, my anger at Gabriel, the natural distance that violence creates between people. He'd maneuvered us all like chess pieces. Call Gabriel, I said. Right now. But Miguel. Gabriel will protect Miguel. You know he will. I grabbed my phone, found Gabriel's number, the one I'd been staring at for 3 days without calling. We end this. Tonight. Gabriel answered on the first ring, voice rough with exhaustion. Maya, Dimitri's coming for me. Carmen told me everything. He's been planning this since I left. Silence for 3 heartbeats. Then, where are you exactly? I gave him Carmen's address. Background noise erupted, orders being shouted, engines starting. Listen to me very carefully, Gabriel said, voice shifting into that command mode I recognized. You have 2 choices. I can extract you right now, take you somewhere Dimitri will never find you. Or I let him take me. And we end this. More silence. Maya, that's not... It is. You know it is. I looked at Carmen, saw my own fear reflected in her eyes. He won't stop. He'll keep using people I love to get to you. Unless we make him think he's won. If something goes wrong, then you make sure it doesn't. I surprised myself with how steady my voice was. You said you'd protect me. So protect me. But let's finish this. I heard him exhale. Could picture him running a hand through his hair the way he did when calculating odds. Adriana will coordinate. Luca positions the team. You wear the bracelet I gave you. Don't take it off for any reason. The tracker's always active. When they move you, we'll know exactly where. The other families? Declared neutrality this morning. If I survive this alone, they'll accept my territory stays intact. If I don't, he paused, then it doesn't matter anyway. We planned for an hour. Carmen would act normal, keep me at her apartment. Dimitri would make his move within 24 hours, likely public to force Gabriel's hand. I'd go quietly to avoid civilian casualties. Gabriel's team would shadow at a distance, wait for the location to be confirmed, then strike. One more thing, Gabriel said before hanging up. The night your parents died. I looked into it after you mentioned them. I found inconsistencies in the police report, witness statements that disappeared, evidence that wasn't processed. His voice dropped. Dimitri was in Chicago 12 years ago, working for the Bratva's previous leadership. I think he knows something about that night. The implications crashed over me. My parents' deaths weren't random. They were connected to this world I'd stumbled into, to Dimitri's operations, to something bigger than I'd ever imagined. Find out, I whispered. When this is over, I need to know. I will. I promise. They came at noon the next day. Carmen and I were having coffee, pretending everything was normal, when the building's fire alarm went off. Standard evacuation procedure. Everyone flooding into the streets. Professional chaos. A black van pulled up as we reached the sidewalk. 2 men emerged, moving with military precision. One grabbed Carmen, holding her back. The other reached for me. I didn't fight, didn't scream, just locked eyes with Carmen and nodded once before letting them guide me into the van. The drive took 30 minutes. I counted turns, tried to memorize the route, felt the bracelet heavy on my wrist. Gabriel was tracking this. He knew where I was going. I had to trust that. We stopped at the docks, the industrial section where shipping containers stacked like metal mountains. The warehouse they took me to smelled like rust and salt water, empty except for chairs and harsh fluorescent lights. Dmitri Volkov stood in the center, smoking a cigarette, looking exactly like his photos. Pale hair, cold eyes, a smile that never reached above his mouth. Maya Sinclair. He spoke with an accent that turned my name into something threatening. The photographer. The woman who got Gabriel Ravellini off his game. I said nothing. Kept my expression neutral despite my racing heart. He's coming for you, you know. Right now, probably. My men reported his vehicles mobilizing 20 minutes ago. Dmitri circled me like a predator. He'll walk into my trap because he can't help himself. Because you made him weak. If you think Gabriel's weak, you don't know him at all. That cold smile widened. Oh, I know him. Known his family for years. I knew his father, knew his operations. And I knew your parents, too. My breath stopped. What? 12 years ago. I was doing surveillance work for my organization. Your parents, they saw something they shouldn't have. A meeting between a city councilman and my superior. Your father tried to be hero. Went to police with statement. So we eliminated the problem. He said it casually, like discussing weather. Staged it as gang violence. No one questioned it. Just another tragedy in a violent city. The truth hit like a physical blow. My parents died because they tried to do the right thing. Because they witnessed corruption connected to the man now standing in front of me. You killed them. My voice shook with rage I could barely contain. I followed orders. But yes, technically. He flicked ash from his cigarette. And now their daughter is helping me eliminate the last obstacle to controlling the city's shipping. Poetic, no? I heard vehicles outside. Doors slamming. Dimitri heard it too, smile growing wider. Right on schedule. My men have the perimeter surrounded. Gabriel comes in alone, as demanded, or we start executing his people one by one. The warehouse door opened. Gabriel walked in, hands visible, no weapon drawn. But I knew him now. Knew the way he moved. He was coiled tension wrapped in false surrender. Touching, Dimitri said. The great Gabriel Ravellini, walking into death for a woman he knew 3 weeks. Let her go. This is between us. Everything is between us now. Dimitri pulled a gun, pointed it at my head. On your knees. Gabriel complied, eyes never leaving mine. In that gaze, I saw apology, determination, and something else. Trust. He trusted me to be ready. Any last words? Dimitri asked, turning the gun from me to Gabriel. The moment stretched. Then everything exploded. I dropped and rolled as gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Luca's team crashed through side entrances, suppression fire forcing Dimitri's men into cover. Gabriel was already moving, weapon appearing from somewhere, taking down the 2 nearest guards with brutal efficiency. Dimitri swung his gun back to me. I didn't freeze. I grabbed the metal folding chair I'd been sitting on, swung it into his arm as he fired. The shot went wide, hitting concrete. He backhanded me and I tasted blood, but I'd bought Gabriel seconds. Seconds were all he needed. Gabriel hit Dimitri like a freight train, both men crashing into the concrete floor. The fight was vicious, personal. Fists and elbows and rage given physical form. I heard someone behind me. Spun to see a Bratva soldier raising his weapon at Gabriel's exposed back. My hand found a loose pipe near the wall. I swung with everything I had, connecting with his skull. He dropped. Gabriel pinned Dimitri, one hand wrapped around his throat. For her parents. For everyone you've destroyed. Dimitri struggled, gasped, then went still. It was over. Luca cleared the warehouse, confirmed all threats neutralized. Gabriel stood slowly, blood on his knuckles. A bullet grazed across his shoulder I hadn't seen him take. His eyes found mine across the warehouse floor. You okay? I nodded, though I was shaking. You were shot. Barely. He crossed to me, pulled me into his arms despite the blood and violence surrounding us. You saved my life. That soldier behind me. You saved mine first. About 100 times now. Sirens wailed in the distance. Adriano appeared with instructions for cleanup, for police statements, for managing the aftermath. But for one moment, Gabriel and I just held each other in a warehouse full of bodies and spent shells, alive when we probably shouldn't be. I'm sorry, he whispered against my hair. For what Dimitri did to your parents. For pulling you into this world. I chose this. I chose you. I pulled back to look at him. All of it. His thumb traced my jaw where Dimitri had hit me. No more secrets. No more distance. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Together, I agreed. And meant it. The private hospital room smelled like antiseptic and expensive flowers someone had sent. Gabriel refused the morphine they tried to give him, settling for local anesthetic while they stitched the bullet graze across his shoulder. I sat in the chair beside his bed, unable to look away from the wound that should have killed him if his reflexes had been a fraction slower. Stop staring, he said, voice rough but steady. I've had worse. That doesn't make me feel better. His hand found mine, thumb tracing circles on my palm. You saved my life today. That soldier would have shot me in the back. You saved mine first. We're even. We're not keeping score, Maya, but we were. Some part of me was always calculating, always measuring the debt between us. He'd pulled me from a shootout. I'd let myself be bait. He'd killed the man who murdered my parents. I'd chosen him despite everything. Adriano appeared in the doorway, looking more exhausted than I'd ever seen him. The Donatelli and Castrovani families are here. They want to speak with you. Gabriel started to rise. I pushed him back down. You just got shot, and they need to see me standing. But he didn't fight when I helped him into a robe, careful of his shoulder. The hospital had cleared an entire wing for security, turning the conference room into an impromptu meeting space. 3 men waited inside, all in their 50s or 60s, all radiating the same controlled power Gabriel had. They stood when we entered. Respect or calculation? I couldn't tell which. Ravellini? The oldest said. Silver hair, expensive suit, eyes like a shark. You survived. I did. Gabriel remained standing despite the pain I saw in the tightness around his mouth. Dmitry Volkov is dead. His organization will scatter or be absorbed. My territory remains intact. Because you eliminated the threat personally. Another man, stockier, with a scar bisecting his eyebrow. Old school. We respect that. The third man's gaze landed on me. And you brought civilian into this. That's new. Maya isn't a civilian anymore. Gabriel's voice carried warning. She's under my protection permanently. Anyone who forgets that answers to me. They exchanged glances. Some silent communication I couldn't read. Then the oldest nodded. The Bratva's territory goes to auction. We'll discuss terms next week. For now, peace holds. They left without ceremony. The moment the door closed, Gabriel sank into a chair, pain finally breaking through his control. Back to bed, I commanded. Yes, ma'am. Sophia burst in as we returned to his room, eyes red from crying, and threw herself at her brother, carefully avoiding his injured shoulder. You idiot. You absolute idiot. You could have died, but I didn't. He hugged her with his good arm. I had help. Sophia turned to me. Thank you. For keeping him alive. For being brave enough to walk into that trap. I had good backup. The next visitor was Carmen, pale and shaking, clutching flowers she'd probably bought from the hospital gift shop. I'm so sorry. Both of you. I should have told you earlier about the wiretap, about Dimitri's threats. Gabriel gestured for her to sit. Your brother, Miguel. He's in a facility upstate, top-rated program. Fully paid for the next year. When he's ready, I have a job for him if he wants it. Legitimate work, good pay. Carmen's eyes filled with tears. Why would you do that after what I did? Because Dimitri exploited your fear. That's on him, not you. He glanced at me. And because Maya cares about you. That makes you family. She left crying, grateful and overwhelmed. We sat in silence for a while, processing everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. Dimitri said my parents witnessed corruption. I finally said that they tried to report it and were killed for it. I need to know the specifics. I've had Adriano digging through police records, witness statements, everything we could find. Gabriel pulled out his phone, pulled up files with his good hand. Your father photographed a city councilman meeting with Bratva leadership 12 years ago. Tried to submit it as evidence to the FBI. Someone leaked that information. 2 days later, your parents were dead. The confirmation hurt more than not knowing. They died doing the right thing. They died because corrupt people valued power over justice. He set down his phone. I can't change that, but I can make sure their deaths meant something. Your father's photos, the ones he never got to publish. We found them in evidence storage. I want to release them now, with your permission. Let the world see what he documented. That would expose the same people I have in my archive. Yes, we could coordinate the release. Your current work with his historical documentation. Show 12 years of systemic corruption. It felt right. My parents had tried to tell the truth and been silenced. Now their daughter could finish what they started. I'll do it. But I need time to process this, to grieve properly, to figure out what comes next. Gabriel's expression softened. You can leave, Maya. Go back to your life. The threat's gone. Dimitri's dead. His organization scattered. You're safe now. Am I? Or will there always be another Dimitri? Another threat? Another reason to look over my shoulder? With me, Probably yes. He didn't sugarcoat it. This world doesn't have happy endings, just truces between wars. Elena arrived as visiting hours ended, carrying a basket of bread despite the late hour. She took one look at Gabriel's bandaged shoulder and shook her head. "You're as stubborn as your father," she told him. "Worse," he admitted. She turned to me, eyes knowing. "Walk with me." We left Gabriel with Sophia and went to the hospital chapel. Empty at this hour, quiet enough for honest conversations. "Your grandfather was a complicated man," Elena said, sitting in the front pew. "He worked the docks, knew the families, sometimes did favors that weren't quite legal. I knew what he was when I married him. Chose him anyway." "Did you regret it?" "Every day." She took my hand. "And never once. He gave me 43 years of love, 3 children, a life richer than any alternative. But it cost me sleep, peace, the certainty that he'd come home every night. That's the trade you make with men like them. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You ran into gunfire to save him, Minhaneda. You're stronger than you think." We sat in silence, and I realized I'd already made my choice. The moment I'd agreed to be bait, the moment I'd swung that pipe to save Gabriel's life, I'd chosen which side of the line I stood on. 2 weeks later, I stood in the rebuilt bakery, watching contractors install the final fixtures. Gabriel had insisted on covering the costs, and for once, Elena had accepted without argument. The new kitchen gleamed with stainless steel, the display cases custom-built to her specifications. I'd spent those weeks editing photos, writing articles, coordinating with journalists to release my archive alongside my father's documentation. 3 city councilmen had already resigned. More indictments were coming. Carmen worked beside me, her investigative reporting finally free from Dimitri's shadow. Sophia visited daily, bringing coffee and gossip from law school. Gabriel gave me space. He called once, brief and careful. I meant what I said. "You're free to choose, Maya." No pressure, no obligation. But freedom felt empty without him. On the evening of the bakery's reopening, I found Gabriel standing outside, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain in a way I'd never seen. "I wasn't sure you'd want me here," he said. I wasn't sure either. I stepped closer, but I realized something these past 2 weeks. I don't want the life I had before. Safe, careful, documenting other people's wars without being part of anything. I want truth, purpose, partnership. With me, after everything? Because of everything. I took his hand, scarred knuckles and all. On my terms. I keep my independence, my work, my name. I'm not your possession or your protected asset. I'm your partner, equal in all ways that matter. His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes for the first time since I'd known him. I can live with those terms. Good. Because I'm not done making demands. I pulled him close. I want transparency. No more secrets. No more protecting me from ugly truths. If we do this, we do it honestly. Agreed. And one more thing. I looked up at him. This complicated, dangerous man I'd somehow fallen in love with. Tell me you love me. Not because I'm convenient, or because I saved your life, because you actually do. I love you, he said without hesitation. From the moment you argued with me in that alley, from every stubborn, brave, brilliant thing you've done since. I love you, Maya Sinclair. Completely, terrifyingly, more than I thought I was capable of. I kissed him in front of the bakery where my grandmother had built her life, where my family's story had roots deeper than violence or fear. And for the first time since that stormy night in a shared Uber, I felt certain I was exactly where I belonged. 3 months felt like both a lifetime and no time at all. I stood in the gallery space on Michigan Avenue, adjusting the final photograph in my exhibition, Buried Truths, 12 Years of Chicago Corruption. The image showed a city councilman accepting an envelope from a man whose face was partially obscured, taken by my father's camera 2 weeks before his death. Beside it hung one of my recent photos, the same councilman, now 20 pounds heavier and considerably grayer, shaking hands with a developer in front of a luxury high-rise that had displaced 200 families. Full circle. My father's work and mine, telling the same story across 12 years. Carmen appeared at my elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. The Tribune's critic just arrived. So did that reporter from the Times. This is huge, Maya. It feels surreal. I accepted the glass, though my hands were too unsteady to drink. My parents documented corruption and were killed for it. Now I'm doing the same thing, and people are calling it brave. The difference is you have protection. Carmen gestured subtly to where Luca stood near the entrance, dressed in a suit that almost made him look like a regular gallery visitor. Almost. And you exposed enough people that the ones left standing are too afraid to retaliate. The exhibition had launched 2 weeks ago with a coordinated media blitz. My photographs alongside my father's, Carmen's investigative reporting filling in the connections, and a database of corruption spanning more than a decade. 3 aldermen had resigned. The FBI had opened investigations into 5 city officials. The mayor had promised reforms that probably wouldn't happen, but sounded good in press conferences. More importantly, my parents' names were finally attached to the truth they'd tried to expose. The gallery had created a memorial wall, photographs of them alongside their work, honoring their sacrifice. Elena arrived with Sofia, both dressed elegantly, my grandmother wearing the pearl necklace she saved for special occasions. She pulled me into a fierce hug. Your parents would be so proud, Minha Neta. So proud. The bakery reopens next week, I said, desperate to change the subject before I started crying. You excited? Terrified. But she smiled. 70 years old, starting over. Gabriel insisted on all new equipment, said the insurance payout wasn't enough. I told him I'd pay him back, and he said I could pay him in bread, every Sunday, for the rest of his life. She shook her head affectionately. That boy has his father's ruthlessness and his mother's heart. Sophia had graduated law school the previous month, passing the bar on her first try. True to her idealistic nature, she'd immediately joined a clinic providing legal services to immigrants and asylum seekers, funded by an anonymous donation that everyone knew came from Gabriel's restructured operations. The clinic's already overwhelmed, Sophia told me as we wandered through the gallery. We've got 5 attorneys and a waiting list of 300 people. But it's the work I'm supposed to be doing, you know? Using this family's resources for something that actually helps people. I did know. I'd felt the same way about my photography, about choosing to expose corruption rather than just document its aftermath. Gabriel hadn't arrived yet. He'd texted an hour ago that he was running late, dealing with some situation at the docks that required his immediate attention. Life with him meant accepting that emergencies came with the territory, that his world operated on schedules that didn't accommodate art gallery openings or normal relationship expectations. But we'd found our rhythm. I'd moved into my own apartment in Lincoln Park, a modest 2-bedroom I'd purchased with money from selling prints to collectors who'd discovered my work through the controversy. Most nights I ended up at Gabriel's penthouse anyway, but having my own space mattered. Independence, even symbolic, kept me grounded. The gallery filled with guests as opening hour approached. Journalists, activists, politicians trying to prove they weren't corrupt. Collectors who appreciated art that made them uncomfortable. I gave a short speech about my parents, about the importance of documentation, about how silence enables oppression. Gabriel slipped in during the applause, positioning himself at the back of the crowd. Our eyes met across the room, and he nodded once. Approval, support, pride. Everything I needed in that moment. After the formal portion ended and guests mingled with champagne and opinions, he found me studying one of my father's photographs. You did something remarkable here, he said quietly. Taking his work and yours, creating a narrative that spans a generation. It's powerful. 3 aldermen resigned because of this exhibition. 4 now. The news broke 20 minutes ago. Alvarez from the 31st Ward. Your photo of him accepting cash from a contractor was apparently the final straw for the FBI. I turned to face him fully. He'd gotten his hair cut since I last saw him 2 days ago, and there was a fresh bruise on his knuckles he'd tried to conceal with careful positioning. Some things about his world would never change. You're bleeding through your sleeve, I observed. He glanced down, noting the small spot of red seeping through his shirt cuff. Minor disagreement during negotiations. Nothing serious. Gabriel, already stitched. Adriano has a doctor on retainer for exactly these situations. He took my hand, examining the silver bracelet still on my wrist. You kept this. I kept everything that mattered. We stood like that for a moment, surrounded by evidence of corruption and violence, and the complicated ways power operated in cities like Chicago. Then he pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. I was going to wait until after the exhibition closed, do this somewhere private and carefully planned, but Adriano reminded me that careful planning isn't always better than honest timing. He opened the box, revealing a simple platinum band with a single emerald-cut diamond. Elegant without being ostentatious, exactly my style. Maya Sinclair, marry me. Not because you need my protection, or because I need your legitimacy. Marry me because in 3 months you've become the person I think about first when I wake up and last before I sleep. Because you see the worst parts of my world and choose to stay anyway. Because you're brave and brilliant, and you make me want to be better than I am. My throat tightened with emotion. Around us, the gallery had gone quiet, guests realizing what was happening. That's not a question, I managed. Marry me? His eyes held genuine uncertainty. This powerful man who'd killed to protect me, now vulnerable in a way that made my heart ache. Please? On one condition. I held up a hand as he started to smile. I keep my name. Maya Sinclair, not Maya Ravellini. My parents gave me that name, and it means something now. Attached to this work. Agreed. What else? I want to photograph the wedding. Set up cameras, remote triggers, document the whole thing properly. Of course you do. Now he did smile, genuine and reaching his eyes. Anything else? Carmen's my maid of honor. Sophia's a bridesmaid. Elena walks me down the aisle. And your guest list can't include anyone currently under federal investigation. That last one eliminates about 40% of my associates. But I'll manage. He slipped the ring onto my finger. And it fit perfectly, because of course he'd somehow obtained my ring size without asking. Is that a yes? That's a yes. The gallery erupted in applause. Carmen was crying. Sophia was filming on her phone. Elena was beaming with the satisfaction of a woman who'd known this outcome from the beginning. Gabriel kissed me there in front of my parents' memorial wall, in front of evidence of corruption we'd helped expose, in front of everyone who'd come to witness art that told uncomfortable truths. And for the first time since that stormy night in a shared Uber, I felt like my life had aligned exactly as it was meant to. Later, after the gallery closed and guests departed, and Carmen had convinced me to celebrate with dinner at a restaurant that required reservations months in advance, but mysteriously had a table available when Gabriel called, we ended up on his penthouse balcony, watching the city lights reflect off Lake Michigan. I'd brought my camera, because I always brought my camera. Set it up on a tripod, framed the shot carefully. Both of us in profile against the skyline, Chicago stretching out behind us like a promise or a threat depending on your perspective. Remote trigger? Gabriel asked, familiar with my process now. You hold it, when you're ready. He wrapped his arm around me, pulled me close against his side, and held up the small remote. On 3? On 3. We counted together, and the shutter clicked. A moment captured. 2 people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and somehow built something real from the wreckage. The photograph would show us laughing, comfortable, obviously in love. It wouldn't show the violence that brought us together or the complicated moral compromises we'd both made to get here. It wouldn't show his bruised knuckles or the tracker in my bracelet or the gun concealed in his ankle holster. But it would show truth. Our truth. And sometimes, that was enough. What happens now? I asked, still pressed against his side, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. Now we live. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. We document corruption, protect the people we love, and try to make this city slightly less broken than we found it. That's ambitious. We're ambitious people. Below us, Chicago sprawled in all its complicated glory. Beautiful and corrupt, violent and inspiring, home to millions of stories intersecting in ways that created patterns only visible from a distance. My story had started with a storm and a stranger, and a series of choices that led me here. To this man, this life, this moment balanced between everything I'd lost and everything I'd found. I wouldn't change a single decision.